This week I want to talk about campground electrical pedestals. This week it could be very boring for some of you. I'm going to get technical and talk about electricity, and it may be pretty boring for some of you. So if you don't like electricity, or if you're not interested in learning about electric pedestals for campgrounds, you could probably just go ahead and turn this off. Now, electricity is a dangerous source of energy if you don't know what you're doing. Now, I'm not a certified electrician, but I do have a general understanding of residential and commercial electricity. Now, as a work camper, you may be called to do some type of electrical work, usually simple things like wire up a light or a receptacle or an outlet or something like that. The campground electrical pedestal is a lot like a circuit breaker box in your house. It's just a bunch of wires and circuit breakers. Now, I've set up a General Electric pedestal down in our club room, and I wanted to go down there and talk about some of the components of the pedestal. Now, this pedestal does not have any electricity attached to it. It's just a new pedestal. I'm going to stand it up in the club room and we're going to talk about the components, so I don't have to worry about disconnecting the power source. However, if you work on any electricity, you should always disconnect the power source from the components that you're working on, just to be safe. You don't want to get electrocuted. Let's go down to the club room and check this electrical pedestal out. Now, this is the pedestal with its covers on. You got the cover up here, and then this is the main body of the pedestal. You have your breakers right here, and then you have a 50 amp receptacle here, and you have a 30 amp receptacle here, and a 20 amp receptacle here. And then down here is the service lug area. This is the service lug area. This pedestal would be buried into the ground, and your wires running under the ground would come into the pedestal. You'd have a 120 volt wire that would connect to this lug. You'd have a neutral that would connect to this lug, and then you'd have another 120 volt wire that would connect to this lug. And then on the other side, you would have wires that would run to the next pedestal. You'd have a 120 volt wire that would run to the next pedestal. You'd have a neutral that would run to the next pedestal, and a 120 volt wire that would run to the next pedestal. And here, this wire would carry voltage up to your bus bar, and this wire would carry voltage up to your power head. And this is your neutrals. You have two wires going to your receptacles. You'll have 12 gauge wires, and then this wire goes to your 50 amp receptacle, and that's a 10 gauge wire. Now, this is a close-up of the breakers, the 50 amp receptacle, 30 amp receptacle, and 20 amp receptacle. So you have a 2-pole 50 amp breaker. You have a 1-pole 30 amp breaker and a 1-pole 20 amp breaker. The 20 amp breaker feeds the 20 amp receptacle. The 30 amp breaker feeds the 30 amp receptacle, and the 50 amp breaker feeds the 50 amp receptacle. This wire supplies 120 volts to one pole of the 50 amp breaker. This wire supplies 120 volts to the other pole of the 50 amp breaker, for a total of 240 volts. This wire also supplies 120 volts to the hot bus bar. The hot bus bar supplies 120 volts to the 30 amp breaker and the 20 amp breaker. When the breakers are on, each of these two wires supply 120 volts to the 50 amp receptacle. This white wire is the neutral wire to the 50 amp receptacle from the neutral bus bar. This is the grounding wires for the three receptacles. This is the back side of the 30 amp and 20 amp receptacles. When the breakers are on, this black wire supplies 120 volts to the 30 amp receptacle. This white wire is the neutral wire to the 30 amp receptacle from the neutral bus bar. This green wire is the 30 amp grounding wire. This black wire supplies 120 volts to the 20 amp receptacle. This white wire is the neutral wire to the 20 amp receptacle from the neutral bus bar. This green wire is the 20 amp grounding wire. Well, this week I pretty much talked about just some technical stuff. I didn't go into any of that hee-haw funny stuff like I normally do. Maybe you don't find that funny at all. So maybe this is a better video for you than previous videos. I don't know. Anyway, I have a good time making the videos. I like to joke around and cut up and have fun. So I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please click like below, and subscribe if you'd like to hear more videos like this one. New videos every Friday right here on this YouTube channel. And I try to get them out before 8 o'clock because some people go to work and they like to see a video right before work. I don't know, but that's what I do. Anyway, until later, thanks for your time. Bye.